right? The people in our lives that are watching us. But he says, look, I don't want you to think about those things. I want you to keep your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. Now that word pioneer means he is the originator. He is the founder of your faith. He did it first, right? Can you imagine when Neil Armstrong stepped on the surface of the moon and then came back home, and the guys that were going there next, do you think those guys asked the pioneer if they had any tips? Had anyone ever walked on the moon before? Nope. And then be the third and fourth guy? I'm sure they went to Neil Armstrong and said, hey, anything we need to know? Anything you want to pass on to us? Because they were the pioneers. Jesus is the pioneer of our faith. He's the only one who's ever done it the right way. Should we keep our eyes and talk to that guy? Yes. But he's also the perfecter of our faith. And that word there means one who finishes. Here's the good news for you and me. He has run the race for us. He's already finished the race. We're just following in his footsteps. Verse 3 says, consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, so that you won't grow weary and give up. In struggling against sin, you've not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. Why is the author bringing that up? What's his point? I think part of his point is we get a little big for our britches, don't we? We think we're all that in a bag of chips. Or we think, man, this has never been done. It's never going to happen. I don't know how I'm going to get through this problem. And what the author is saying is, look, I want you to consider Jesus. And what did Jesus do, according to the author? He endured. What did he endure? Hostility from sinners. Which led to what? You don't even need to read this. You know what happened. He shed his blood. He died on the cross. He did the hard thing. He said, look, I don't want you to grow weary and give up. I want you to consider that Jesus did this, so maybe he can help you do it. And in this whole racing thing, there is this idea, and we see this in a lot of different sports. For a long time, in fact, before 1954, there was this idea that no human being would ever be able to run 1 mile in less than 1 minute. Or 4 minutes. 1 minute. That'd be good, right? That'd be really good. That you could not run a 1 mile in less than 4 minutes. That it was impossible. It could not be done. It was humanly impossible. Until Roger Bannister in 1954 did it. In fact, Roger Bannister, who was 25 at the time, by the way, you don't want something done, ask a young person because they don't know what can't be done, right? And he ran it. He not only broke the 4-minute mile, you see the time he did it in? 3:49.4. Almost 11 seconds faster than what was impossible. And then, over the next 70 years, that record had been, not that record, but 1,600 athletes over the last 70 years have also done a 4-minute mile or less. People in this room, there are probably people in this room, if they tried and trained, could run less than a 4-minute mile. You know what the record is today? Any guesses before they put it up? 3 minutes solid. Okay? 3:20? All right, it's actually, I was a little surprised. What's that? 3:43. 3:43.13. That was broken in 1999. They think, man, that's only 6 seconds faster. which shows you a couple things. What's it show you? Number one, it is hard. It's tough. I would have thought probably 3 minutes, right? But it's still pretty good that we can do the impossible. It can't be done. Now, why is it that 1,600 people since 1954 have been able to run a 4-minute mile or less? Because they knew it could be done. Somebody else did it, and then everyone else was like, well, if Roger can do it, I could do it. What it does is it shows us that limitation we thought we had, we actually don't have. And that's what the author here is saying. Look, keep your eyes on Jesus, who has already done what you're trying to do. It can be done. Keep your eyes on Him. Get rid of all the stuff that's weighing you down. I guarantee Roger Bannister did not try and run a 4-minute mile while carrying an infant child or carrying a 5-pound weight. He ran light. But as soon as he finished running that thing, and not just by a little bit, but by a whole 11 seconds, people were like, oh, it can be done. And hundreds, thousands have done it since. Keep your eyes on Jesus. And all the struggles that you and I go through are part of lesson number 3, and it takes up the biggest bulk of this chapter. Verse 5, it says, and you have forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons. And then he quotes Proverbs 3:11 through 12 that says, my son, do not take the Lord's discipline lightly or lose heart when you are reproved by Him, for the Lord disciplines the one He loves and punishes every son He receives. What we are called to do in lesson number 3 is submit to discipline. Now, I want to be honest with you. Because I like to be liked, I wanted to stop at lesson 2. Right? Because lesson 1 and 2, they're simple, right? Put things down, keep your eyes on Jesus, but now we come to where the rubber meets the road. What are we called to do? We don't like discipline, do we? In fact, the author admits it, right? Where is it? No discipline, verse 11, seems enjoyable at the time, but painful. To which we all say, duh. How many of you remember being disciplined as a child? How many of you remember that discipline being much more severe than we are allowed to discipline children today? Yeah. How many of you are like, we should bring some of it back? Yeah. Yeah, I remember when things shifted for me as a teenager, and some of you may remember this. Yeah, it's gonna be scandalous for a second. Mom, I'm pretty sure we're past the statute of limitations. But when I was a child, my mother used a belt. But I remember vividly, I can remember the room and where I was when she spanked me, and it didn't hurt. And then I made a tactical error. I laughed. And I said, that didn't hurt. But there was a problem with that. She was not the only human being in my life. So she said, fine, we'll wait until your dad gets home. To which I thought, you moron, you should have acted like it hurt until the day you died. Because Dad, it was a little tougher, right? Now, we were all disciplined as children. Now, maybe it was corporal punishment, maybe you got time out, maybe you had a naughty step, whatever it was. Maybe you really want to hit kids today, you know where to hit them. Take their phone away. Or if they're younger than they don't have a phone, even broader than that, no more screen time. See, how many of you kids in the room wish that mom and dad would never ground you from screen time ever again? Yeah. How many of you would rather be grounded from just about anything else than screen time? Now, you all have also made a tactical error because you just told your parents how important and effective that punishment is. We are all disciplined as children, right? Have you ever seen a child that wasn't disciplined? What did you think about that child? Here's what's happened. So let's pretend you're at a restaurant. I know this has never happened to any of us. You got this kid who's running around, knocking drinks off of people's tables, pulling napkins down, eating food off of your plate. What would be the thing going on in your head? Where are your parents? Right? In essence, what you're asking is, who do you belong to? Now, in that moment, you may wish you could adopt them for 5 seconds and correct them yourself, right? Why are you looking for their parents? Why are we looking to their parents to discipline them? Because that's their responsibility. It's their job. They are responsible. And when they don't discipline them, we're looking around and saying, what is wrong in this situation? Right? You see a spoiled child, you know what's happened in their life. What's happened? They've not been disciplined. What the author here is saying, look, you need to endure suffering as discipline because God is dealing with you as His children. You are His child. In fact, he goes to say, in fact, if you're not disciplined by God, what does that mean? You're an illegitimate child. You're not His child. Now, this is one of those things that's really easy to read and talk about on a Sunday morning, but as soon as discipline, suffering enters our lives, what's the first thing we ask? Why is this happening to me, God? And then the follow-up is, please make it stop. Anyone ever have a child say, could you please make this punishment stop? Yeah? You've had a child say that? Yo, your buddy here? Yeah. Anyone ever had a child? Can we, and they start to negotiate, right? Listen, parents, we do not negotiate with terrorists. And they are just looking, they're terrorists, looking to get off the hook, right? Right? You say, if you say a week, you're grounded from screen time for a week, what are they immediately asking? Why? And then what? Yeah, can we do 4 days? How about 1 hour? And our answer is no. In fact, I don't know about you, but in our household, when we started having those conversations, we would elongate the punishment. Oh, we just added a day. You want to keep going? Right? And then sometimes they're dumb enough to try it. Oh, we just added another day. Anything more to say? Right? That's not fair. That's not how. But by the way, and we think when we look at our kids, we see that doesn't make any sense. But here we are as God's children doing the exact same thing. God, please make it stop. I don't know how many of you ever have had children who were so angry with their discipline that they said something like this: you are the worst mom ever. Dads don't seem to get that one much. Why do you think that is? Yeah, I think because dads don't respond very well to that. Oh, I ain't the worst you ever saw. I'll show you the worst father you ever saw, right? But that cuts to the heart of a mom, doesn't it? Moms, how many of you have ever been told you're the worst mom ever? Okay, I want you to look around because there's a lot of really bad moms in this room, according to our children. Right? In the moment when we're being disciplined, we tend to lash out at the one causing us the pain, right? What are we wanting the child to understand? In fact, how many of you have ever had this dumb sentence said to you? This is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. And I'm doing this for your own good. Anyone ever had that said to them? What did you think in that moment? That's garbage. Well, then let's just turn it around then. Right? Now, I don't know, we never said that. I always told my kids, this is for sure going to hurt you more than me. That's the intent. That's the goal, right? For you to have a little pain so that you'll learn and change your behavior. Isn't that what we want our kids to do ultimately? So God says, Paul, or the author here in Hebrews says, look, the suffering you're going through is part of your Father's discipline to help you learn and grow. Now, there are two Greek words for discipline. One is a word that means that I didn't write the word down because it didn't really matter, but one of them means punishment. Right? So I broke the lamp, or I took my dad's car and brought it home with some curb rash. Right? If you did something bad, you got punished for it. Right? That's not the word being used here. This is not punishment. The word that's being used here, really the English translation should be chastisement. Now, what is the difference between punishment and chastisement? Anyone know? Yeah, I mean, punishment is you did something bad, I don't want you to do it again, I want you to feel the pain of it, right? Chastisement is, I want you to learn something from this. I want you to learn a lesson and grow in your life beyond just don't break the lamp. I want you to learn a life lesson that's going to help you grow. Now, can anyone think of an example of being chastised in your family? Not just punished, but chastised. The cold shoulder? No, that's called abuse. No, I'm just kidding. The cold shoulder? I think that's punishment. Yeah. What's that? A hot stove. Right? So a child reaches up to grab the stove, you just put their hand on it. Right? Because you want them to learn a lesson. And those blisters will remind them for weeks. No. If you do, come see me after service. I got someone I need you to meet in a uniform. What do? We smack their hand away and we have a serious conversation with them. And we tell them this is going to hurt you. This is painful. This is not good for you. You're not punishing them for something they were doing. You're chastising them. Because you want them to learn a lesson before they have to learn it the really hard way. Actually touching it. This morning, Charlie, my grandson, we were in the back, we were playing a little bit, and he grabbed the hand sanitizer, and he was going to start playing with it. Now, my parent mind kicked in. What did I say? No, we don't touch that. That will give you owies. And he had already sprayed some on it. He like pumped it at the same time. I said, that will give you owies. And a little of that got on his hand. Like half of a drop got on his fingers. You know what he immediately said? I have owies. I need a Band-Aid. And I don't know what to do in that moment because I told him this will give you owies and he wanted a Band-Aid. But I didn't have a Spidey Band-Aid, so we distracted him away from it. That's chastisement. Was I punishing him for picking up the thing? No. But he has learned that getting owies is a bad thing. And I don't want them. And so he put it down. That's chastisement. That's what that's what the author here is telling us. This is discipline for our own good. And by the way, back to the running thing, no pain, no gain. There's some training that goes into our spiritual lives. Commentary I read, this is on the screen, says, The word for discipline here combines the thoughts of chastisement and education. It points to suffering that teaches us something. The aim of God's chastisement of His people is to produce in them a character like His own. Here's the good news you can take away from this section. If you are suffering and being disciplined by God, that means He loves you. You are His child. And He wants you to learn something from that. Now, I want to put a little asterisk here. Because I think sometimes we think all suffering we're going through, we could make the mistake of going too far the other way. I think we tend to think all suffering that we go through is punishment, right? I don't know about you, that's where I tend to land. God, why are you punishing me? And this is saying, no, there's chastisement, which is I want to teach you something, right? I don't want you to touch the stove. But can we go so far this way that we think all suffering is just God trying to teach me a lesson? Yeah, but here's the truth. Sometimes we're just stupid and sinful. And we do sinful things. And when we do sinful things, we need to be punished. And there are consequences for our actions. If I tell a child, don't touch the stove, and then they touch the stove, do I need to ground them? No. They've been punished. And they learn, right? Don't touch the stove. That's how we all learn, by the way. We got to go through a little bit of pain. So maybe the question is, when suffering comes, is us to ask God, is this punishment? Is this a result of my own sin? Or is this something you're trying to teach me? Are you trying to develop my character? And by the way, God can use your sinful consequences to develop your character. But that's not the way it always happens. Look at the life of Joseph. Joseph went through a lot of suffering, didn't he? Was it a result of his sin? Some, but most of it? No. Sin of his brothers. Sin of Potiphar's wife. But God was using that to change him and grow him for him to become the man that God ultimately wanted him to be and that the world at the time needed. What the author here says is we should submit to this discipline because it is doing something good in our lives. Don't rail against it, submit to it. Have you ever had a child, you ground them and they were like, okay? No? Ever had a child say, yeah, I think I deserve that? What if they did? Yeah, you might have some mercy, right? You might have some grace. Yeah, Dad, I deserve that. Okay, maybe I'll knock a day off, right? Kids, are you listening? Now, here's the thing. We're not stupid. You can't fake it. We can tell when it's real. We know when it's real. And one of the ways is maybe the first time we just see how long that lasts. Well, I'm still not changing anything. See, took half a second for you to lose your mind. So what do we do with this? In particular to this God's discipline thing, there's two ways that we can respond. Number one, we can resist it and grow bitter. Anyone ever know someone like that? They're just bitter because everything that happens in life is terrible and God is punishing them and God hates them. We were talking about Haiti this last week. That is an entire nation that believes that God is punishing them and does not love them. And as a nation, they've grown bitter about that. God loves America, see all the blessings He's poured out on them, but He hates us, see all the ways that He has punished us. But is that true? No. But if you resist it, if you resist God's discipline, you will grow bitter. But if you submit to it, you get better. That's what he says right here at the end. Therefore, strengthen your tired hands and weakened knees. Make straight paths for your feet. Submit to these things, and you will be stronger, and your path ahead will be so much straighter. One last story about my marathon. I'll tell you how important it is for a straight path. There's three kinds of terrains when you're running, right? So what are the three? Very simple. You have flat, uphill, and downhill, right? Of those, what's the best? Flat. What's the worst? It's close. Running downhill is not fun either. In fact, running downhill is harder on your knees. Running uphill is just harder on everything. All right, so I'm going to say uphill is a little worse, but downhill is like a close second, right? So I was running this marathon. I wasn't sure I was going to finish because they tell you at about the 20-mile mark, people start peeling off, right? And that's exactly what happened. About the 20-mile mark, people started falling by the wayside. They were fainting. They couldn't stand. I'm like, okay, I just got 6 miles to go. And I remember I had like a block to go. And I'm coming down this straightaway, and at the end of this road, there was a turn, a right-hand turn, to go to the finish line. And as I got to that turn, I looked, and in my head I thought, oh, you got to be kidding me. It was the steepest hill I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, what kind of masochistic human being puts a hill at the last step of the marathon? In fact, you had to run up this hill and then run like half a block to the finish line. I'm like, just move the finish line to the bottom of the hill. First of all, I'm not counting 26.2 anyway. Just tell me it's it and it's good. Back the finish line up a little bit, or start line up a little bit. Who cares? If I turn this corner, I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And I wasn't sure what to do in that moment until Kyle, how old was he at the time? 8 or so, ran with me up that hill. Said, Dad, I'll run with you. And it made all the difference. Because now I wasn't looking at the hill. I was like, man, my son's running with me. There's somebody who's running this thing with me. Which is a lesson that's not here. It's the freebie. Bring someone with you on the race. Have a running partner with you. Especially at the worst times. We need someone beside us. And by the way, Jesus is running right there with you. And that guy can run on water. So that's who you want by your side, right? Sometimes he's going to carry you. Now, I will tell you, just to let you, I got to the top of the hill, I turned the corner, and when that finish line is in front of you, you forget 26 miles. In fact, there were 3 people in front of me, between me and that finish line, and I wanted to smoke at least one of them. You have to come find me later, I'll tell you. So when we submit to God's discipline in our lives, we get better, we get stronger. The path ahead is leveled out instead of being so hilly. And we find healing in our lives. But what's the most important lesson? What do we need to remember? Keep your eyes on Jesus. Because remember, when I came down that finish line and I saw the finish line, imagine that's Jesus saying, come on, I got you. Nothing else matters. All of a sudden, you got energy you didn't have 5 seconds ago, right? Keep your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of your faith. Let's stand and pray. Father, thank you for this beautiful day you've given us and for this lesson once again. Thank you for everyone who braved the snow today, and I pray that you'll give us a fantastic rest of our day. And Father, as we go through suffering, help us to remember that it means we are your children. There's people in this room right now who I know are suffering through things, going through difficulties and hardships and challenges. Father, let us realize that that is part of running this race of faith, this life that you've laid out before us. Let us keep our eyes on you, submit to that discipline, lay off everything that's holding us back, and run this race with perseverance. Knowing that you're running with us, you've run it before, we can do it. And all God's people said, amen. God bless you. Stack a chair. I only did this section, so you all are ready for that section, right? Stack them in groups of 7.